Cool. So I like to start off with just kind of recapping where you and Bruno started, and then going through just like a summary of from the beginning until you got to me.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. We adopted him from the shelter, and they told us he wasn't good with kids, and it took him a little while to kind of come out of his shell, and it seemed like it was in the middle of COVID too, so we weren't socializing him very, very much, and he was maybe 4 years old, I think, 3 years old, and but yeah, he'd start barking at people on walks, and it just kind of started like that, and then kind of snowballed. We started seeing a trainer maybe 6 months after we got him, who, lots of treats. When we see people, give them treats, that kind of thing. And we did that for a while. That maybe was, I don't know, maybe that was helping, maybe not. And then, but I think we kind of got stuck in a rut there. And then things kind of got worse after a while. We had a few biting incidents after a vet visit. I think that kicked it off, where we had to kind of hold him down with like a muzzle that he hadn't worn before, and just give him shots. And I think that kicked it off. There wasn't a bite at that time, but then when we got home, then we started seeing a different trainer. We tried that, what they were doing, that didn't really help. And then we did like a class for reactive dogs where everybody was like separated, and you'd all come in one at a time, and like that didn't help at all. And then we started seeing a veterinary behaviorist and tried meds. So Prozac Prozac for dogs was what they started us on. That made things a lot worse, or at least not better. He seemed really dopey and out of it, and I think it gave him stomach issues. He'd want to just kind of sit outside by himself a lot, because I think he was like, stomach was weird, didn't want to go inside in case he had to go to the bathroom or something. But did that for a while. Still had biting issues while on that. Switched the meds. That helped, at least it seemed like, with his stomach. Stopped having biting issues with me and my girlfriend, but he still bit a few people and wasn't great around people. So, maybe that was an improvement, maybe not.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then just that didn't seem like it was really working, and they recommended that we were kind of like at the end of our rope, and we're like, what should we do? Can we give him up? And they were like, they kind of recommended euthanizing him, just because they were like, you can't surrender a dog with a bite history like that, it's not safe. So that was sort of where things were at, and then I tried this. So
yeah, and he was having issues with dogs as well.
Yeah.
Right.
We could introduce him to dogs if we were sort of like, it was kind of controlled, if we were at like a neutral place and everybody was off leash, and just, we've done that. That was okay, but he was still like really excited and didn't behave that well, and he was pretty touchy, because he was always prone to kind of going straight from fine to biting and freaking out without a lot of steps in between.
Yeah.
So it was always a little like, and not something we liked doing. But yeah, and just walking him, he'd see a dog and flip out,
Yeah.
That distance got smaller over time, I think, just by being out walking him more, but not really, it was hard to walk by people and dogs, but particularly dogs.
Yeah.
So
And then you did the toys and the games.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, if he's isolated like that, they recommend doing stuff like that to keep him mentally stimulated at some level. So
and from my perspective, you're literally just contributing to the problem, you know. And that's why it's like, you know, I just think that we're not really taking a lot of time learning about dogs. You know, we're trying to think of them in these isolated ways. And, you know, we talked a little bit about this idea, but where, say you do a study and you go, oh, okay, this study shows that the dog responded positively to positive reinforcement. And so then we start saying, okay, well, we're going to use positive reinforcement, and so we're going to try to change how he feels about dogs or people. So when you see him from a distance, like stay from a distance, and then when you see him, start looking at getting his attention back on you, or even when he looks at him, say good or yes, and give him a treat, these type of things, right?
Oh yeah.
And so we're thinking in this way that's not how dogs think. And so this is where, you know, you've been on a hell of a journey through all these different people, all these different approaches.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I saw this episode of Cesar Millan. It was some show. It was after Dog Whisperer was done, and he's had multiple different shows, but I saw this episode where the couple he was helping was talking about how their dog grabbed a hold of another dog and shook it around violently, and it was so scary and very traumatic.
Yeah.
And while they're doing it, they put B-roll footage of a dog who has a toy and he's shaking it around. Yet we don't connect the dots and say, well, I'm allowing my dog to practice this kind of behavior. And we'll say, well, it's just a toy, you know?
Yeah.
But dogs don't understand the concept of a toy. They're just practicing behavior. And this is why some dogs will eat their toys, because they killed this thing, time to eat it.
Yeah, Brew would.
Yeah.
He'd kind of nibble on his toys, nibble the little
ears off and the tail and the eyes.
Yeah, little bits, and then he'd swallow. So we'd kind of keep an eye on him when he had a toy, you know.
Yeah, and so so that's why, you know, when I'm looking at things, there's so many different opinions out there, and you have to look at all the context, you know, and be like, okay, so what's what? And I mean, especially nowadays, I mean, you have a lot of people that are looking to make some money. They're looking to have a career. Like, let me put some videos out and let me promote this and say that. And so you go online and look up help for dogs, and you watch one video, they say this. You watch another video, they say that, and then this and that and that. And so with my clients, I like to have conversations and start to look at these different things and really start to say, like, what about this? And do you see that? And look at it in your life. And if you don't agree, challenge me back. Because really what has to happen is we have to be kind of our own scientist and run our own trials, our own experiments. And to me, I want my dogs to be social.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? That's ultimately what we want. And we do all this training because, well, what do we want? We want a social dog. And we think that the training is going to help in socialization, but it has nothing to do with actually socialization. These are circus tricks. Sit down, heel, look at me. They're not really socialization. And so I just find that we just need to connect back to nature and really get back to what things really are. We're getting too abstract. We're getting into these ideas that just dogs don't get. They don't follow. We have to. My mentor Brandon always talks about how dogs can only think like dogs, and they expect us to think like them. And we spend so much time with them that we think they can understand us.
Yeah.
And so we think that us doing just human things are going to get it. And we have to think from that animal perspective, that dog perspective. And so you went through all these different trainers, you went to vet behaviorists, you did the medication, you tried to do the exercise, the enrichment activities, and had been kind of like, hey, maybe euthanasia is the route. And there was something in you that was like, oh man, there's got to be something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It didn't feel like I had tried everything. And, it was a bit of a sunk cost at that point.
Yeah.
Right. I was pretty determined to not do that. But yeah, I mean, it's. I'm also open. I'm sure in a controlled setting, some of that conditioning works, but at least I wasn't able to implement it correctly with Brew, and it was hard in the world, which is not a controlled setting,
well, this is where I think that life's not controlled settings.
Right.
And then the other thing is that I think that a lot of times people don't want to disclose the things when it's not working.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, I mean, when I was at a shelter, a dog could be biting people, let's say, or attacking dogs, and they would say, little nervous or shy with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That means bites people.
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah.
Could do good would do best in a house with one only dog. Would be best in a house with no kids.
Yeah. That's what we got. No kids.
Yeah.
Maybe only dog, but
yeah.
His history they gave us too showed that when he went to the vet, they would give him an FAS score of 5, which at the time I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
Now I do. It's like, ooh,
yeah.
Didn't like the vet.
Yeah.
And so hard time in places like that. So
yeah. And so trainers that have different beliefs than I do, I always try to reach out and talk to them and see if they want to talk, and they usually never do. And then when I look at it, and when you really look at it, a lot of these things that are being recommended, you'll never see them with dogs in packs. You'll never see them out in a real world situation actually where socializing is taking place. You don't see it.
Yeah.
It's all one-on-one. I had made a comment on this positive force-free trainer's Instagram, and he was bashing this person that was walking dogs. They had prong collars on, and he was saying that this is awful how these dogs are having to walk, and I said, I don't use prong collars or e-collars, and I'm curious, how do you recommend walking multiple dogs? Because I looked through all of his social media, and I never saw him walking multiple dogs ever. It's always one-on-one from a distance, no interactions of dogs together. So if we're thinking, like, people will think that because they can tell their dog to sit, to down, to do these things, oh my gosh, they're so well behaved. Then go interact with that dog over there. No, can't do that. Go interact with that person over there. No, can't do it. And unless they're a kind of dog that, you know, there's dogs that you can get away with some of this stuff with, you know, because of the way that their problems are, and but when it comes to a dog like Bruno, it's just never going to work.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, I look at it and it's like, it's just not going to work. That's why it didn't have the success. I think that you're someone that looks to apply what you're being taught. That's what I how I see you, and you look to really understand it, and you ask questions, and it doesn't work, but we'll be told, oh well, you know, you're not doing this or that.
I think it was easy to sort of see progress when maybe it wasn't there. Like maybe one week we were 40 feet away, and then the next we were 20 feet away.
Yeah.
And then he started, and it's
yeah.
like,
And there's so many different
progress?
situations that it's like, is it because of that this person wasn't as intimidating to him, or did he feel, was his mind kind of split on something else? Like
It was
there's so
very
many,
easy to overthink all these things.
yeah, there's so many variables when it
Yeah.
comes to it, right?
Yeah.
But you know what, when you're just saying this like progress thing, it reminds me, I've seen this a bunch of times, but let's say a dog's jumping up on somebody, and I'll have them get a hold of me, and they're looking for help, and I say, okay, so what have you been doing? And they say, well, what we were taught is that when he jumps up, wait until he puts all fours on the ground, or he sits.
Yeah.
And then we're going to give him treats on the ground, throw treats on the ground, or tell him to sit. And then when he jumps up, tell him to sit and give some treats. And so I'm sitting there watching this dog jumping on him, and then sitting, or jump up, and then all fours go on the ground. And I said, well, how do you think it's going? Well, I think that he's gotten better. And I think I think he's gotten a lot better, and we've made a lot of progress. And I said, so why are you calling me? And they said, well, you know, I mean, it just, I mean, he still does it. And I said, well, how long have you been trying this? And they say, well, about a year and a half. You know?
Yeah.
And I said, let me share you what I see. I see a dog that says, I want food, and if I jump on you, I can get you to give me food. I'll jump on you, and then I'll sit, or I'll just jump and then land on the ground and look at you, and then you give me food.
Yeah.
And it's not a reward to the dog.
Yeah.
They're just saying, this is how I can obtain food when I want it. So then they come over and jump on them. So really, they're actually teaching them to jump on them. And so a lot of times we feel like we're getting somewhere because, well, the dog wasn't sitting before. You know?
Right.
They didn't go into a sit before, so okay, we're getting somewhere. And it's like, but they're still literally doing the thing you don't like. Or the dog will chase after deer. The people will recall them.
Yeah.
You say, good boy, here's some treats. And they say, well, you know, that's pretty good. And I'm like, to me, I want my dog to not chase deer. Don't chase the deer.
Yeah.
But we reinforce the behavior of chasing deer. Runs out, chases deer, comes back, gets food.
Yeah.
And so if I want food, I could chase this. Like, so
Or we would do the get it game. They just toss food and they chase it. And it's like the goal is to break their attention from something that they do want to chase or react to chasing a bit of food.
Yeah, and I've seen people do that, and then the dog gets neurotic. Like they'll get out in situation, they'll be looking all over the ground, and
we did that with Brewer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there would be nothing there, but they'd be like,
yeah, he would do that. He'd get very used to, oh, there's a person over there. Look at
and then start looking at the ground.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just weird. It's a weird behavior.
That does remind me when, you asked earlier why I reached out to you too.
Yeah.
I think it was because, like you were saying about people working with multiple dogs, at home and with people he knows, Brew always seemed very social in a lot of ways. Like he's sweet with everybody until he's not.
Yeah.
You know,
Like a Sour Patch Kid.
a little bit, yeah. But he normally is, and you can tell that he likes being around people. He likes following people around, and you know, he's always kind of paying attention to what people are doing. And same with the couple of dogs he's been able to get along with for periods of time. But you know, it was like I just couldn't see how you could socialize him without him being around dogs. And you know, I had heard from the positive trainers we worked with that people that do the dominance stuff or that do use e-collar, all, you know, that it's kind of bad, you know,
Yeah.
maybe to undersay it, you know.
Yeah.
There's these two cultures of working with dogs
Yeah.
don't agree
Yeah,
with each other
the clash.
at all. Yes,
Yeah.
which I'm
Did I tell you that there's
still
a
wrapping my head around.
yeah,
that.
well, there's a saying, and I don't know if I told you about it, but
Yeah.
there's a saying that the only thing you can get two trainers to agree upon
Yeah.
is the third one's wrong.
Right.
And I always say I'm the third one,
Yeah.
like because I don't fit in I'm not in the remote collar, prong collar, balance training camp, and I'm not in the positive force free camp, you know.
Right.
And so they both agree that Scott's wrong,
Yeah.
and
My thought process was,
Yeah.
you know, I looked at you had lots of dogs,
Yeah.
and you weren't, and I was like, well, euthanasia or
try something.
try something. And
Yeah.
he's with dogs, and
Yeah.
you know, I was kind of like, I believed what the other trainers were saying. You pay them money, you
Yeah.
should heed their advice. Otherwise, what's the point of spending money on this? And so, but we'll see. And he's at least working with dogs, and I had a hunch that just that's what Brew needed. So,
Yeah, and-
regardless of the other methods you might use, that I
Yeah.
was skeptical.
Yeah, and
So-
you were skeptical, and it took several meetings of like you coming and asking questions, meeting clients, getting around things with
I
the
had to come
dog,
see
right?
it. I had to come see it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
your mind just couldn't, like, okay, I've learned all these things, but then I'm also seeing this aspect of like, look at all these dogs and their problems, and some of them you could see your dog in, you know, you're like,
Right.
oh yeah, like that kind of seems like Bruno a bit, and so you know you came multiple times and lots of questions and started to get your mind to where you went, all right, let's give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah.
And so with from the moment you dropped off Bruno to now, like, what are your thoughts and how do you feel about how things are going now? The videos I've sent you and
Yeah, it's definitely evolved over time. I mean, just to say, back up a little bit, where
Yeah.
I started, I think, was before we got Bruno. I'd had dogs that didn't really have behavior problems, and it was simple. You say no to them, you play ball, they can hang out with other dogs,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe you separate them if they start getting a little. But it was just the basic whatever. What kind of everybody knows about dogs,
Yeah.
you know. Then I had to kind of shift my whole perspective to fit the positive reinforcement, fear-free stuff.
Yep.
And you know, it's hard to really drill in, like, to not say no when something's happening, and
Yeah.
redirect and
Yeah.
use treats, all, you know. So that was difficult. And then, but then, yeah, after, you know, the past month or so, watching videos and read a couple other dog training books just to keep some perspective, and no, it's been fascinating. I mean, seems like it's helped Brew a lot. So
Yeah, and-
now I need to keep working on my mindset.
yeah,
So,
and so, you know, hearing like discipline is bad, and that if you discipline dogs, you're gonna have to discipline harder and harder and more. And we were talking about how no, actually, like, I will become typically more and more subtle, and really, if it's learned and we discipline properly, and they've learned to do something, they'll unlearn that.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, this isn't worth it for me, and then I don't have to do it at all.
yeah.
And so we look at like the aggression towards like the lawnmower or the vacuum cleaner, and I've had to have a few conversations with him on that. But what I'm seeing is it's less, and then we get these long gaps of nothing. But I always know that, hey, he can be like that. He has been like that. So it's like an addict to me, where, hey, they might be 4 years sober, but hey, they could go back. Don't be surprised if they do. But what matters is you address it and you get back on that the wagon, right? And so this is why I liked the way that we've approached it thus far, having him come stay with me for a period of time, so that you could just see how things are going, ask your questions, and it's not so stressful, and then you because they say seeing is believing. And so he's been here for like what, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. 5 weeks. Yeah. And I think it was like week 4, you were saying, like, have you taken him out on a walk yet? And I was saying, look, like, the walk is like the last thing I even focus on. Everything is relationship. And so if I can dial everything in here and all that, well, going out on the walk we're going to have an understanding. Bruno and I.
That was the opposite before. Everything was the walk. And at home, it was just...
it's whatever. Because you're focusing on, like, the symptom. The symptom is the reactivity, the aggression. But what's the root of it? Where is it coming from? Why is he feeling this way? And so you get stuck on there when really you should be over here. And so on Saturday, I was just thinking, all right, we're getting close to where we're going to be sending Bruno home here pretty soon. And I thought, well, I definitely want to get him out before that. And I thought, well, I'm going to the food cart. Let me just bring him. And we'll see how it goes. And so that's the first time I think that I even went out front with him. Like, he showed up, and I think pretty much, other than like the initial looking at how he's going to respond to client, I once we were done with that, I haven't even taken him out front. It's been in the house and back here. And so then we go to the food cart, and I take him in, and he did very, very well. And when you saw it, what was your initial reaction when you saw, like, I want to know, when you saw, because in the messenger it shows like a little, like the screen and where I'm at, before you even clicked on it, what was your initial thoughts and feelings when you saw just the area I was in?
I was amazed. That was really cool to see. And on one hand I was really surprised, but then still part of me is kind of why I did this, is I kind of thought that was feasible with him at some point. And so it's just really cool to see that. Yeah,
that it actually took place versus feeling like it's possible but not actually ever being able to get there. Right?
Because we had a trainer say one time that, sounds like Bruno's kind of one of those dogs where he would prefer if it was just you and him in the world and no one else. And I kind of thought, maybe, but I don't know. He kind of likes meeting new things and people and dogs, but he kind of can't handle it.
See, I think that usually those type of things are cop-outs. Like, it's like, I think that's what you say when what you're doing isn't working. And but there are dogs they're a little bit more independent. They're like, it doesn't mean that they won't socialize, but they're not necessarily like butterflies. But
that was the other thing that made me kind of commit more to trying this out with you too, was I started after I looked you up, I started making Brew walk behind me on walks, and that was like night and day with walks and going by people, and we could kind of walk past food carts, so that was like, there's something's here. And it wasn't like maybe it took like a week, but it was more about getting him to walk behind me that took a week. And then once he was kind of following me and in that mode where he's just following, then I saw those videos, and I
You started trying to implement the little
A
things
little
that you
bit,
took from him. Yeah.
to test it out before I sent him over to you. Also thought that might make it a little easier on him if it wasn't such a shock.
And the thing is that like once you get the other pieces in, because like this is a component, but like there's these other aspects of how we live and how we show up that we become more and more believable, and we have a relationship with him that we understand him. And so it becomes so beautiful because it's not just saying sit down, place, come here, good boy. I'm actually understanding who he is, how he's looking at things. Oh, you're feeling too much pressure, you feeling like you're unsafe, I'll protect you. Hey, don't you handle that situation, that's not your role. That's going to get you killed. Like that kind of behavior will get you killed. Don't do that. And so I'm a friend, a parent, ultimately. And this is where, what we're now starting on is the phase where we're going to be incorporating you in, and then he'll still stay. So then you can actually start to get some experience, then go home, reflect on it, process that. And so then when we'll be ready is when you're going to be like, Scott, I'm feeling confident about the next step of bringing him in. Okay. That's how I like to do it. So that it doesn't feel like it's like rushed, like come on, get with it. No, if you still have questions and you're a little unsure, let's get into this. Let's iron it out. Some people it's pretty quick, other people it takes time. But the key is that you mentioned it earlier, is that you're rewiring your thinking. Right. And that's what ultimately we have to do. And all the things that you've been taught, it's going to come up, and then we have to have the debates on that so that it can the new thinking can actually win. And if it doesn't win, why? Because we need to figure out what's going on there. Because this is why I think debates and having conversations with people that don't agree, it's so beneficial, because they might have something you haven't considered. They have an angle that you never looked at. And so you can actually become more knowledgeable, and more knowledge is, they say, knowledge is power. And so I think that this has gone really, really well. I think that it's been cool seeing the I don't know, Scott, to wow, this is amazing, seeing this,
Yeah, especially with the meds. I thought when you were like, we'll get them off meds, it's like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It'll make, I would have imagined that would have made your task quite a bit easier if he was on meds. But he's been fine. Especially, the reactivity, right, which is, I do kind of see that as a symptom of things now too, and not just the problem. At a place with the food carts without meds is
huge.
It's huge,
And he wasn't even looking to react. If anything, he was looking at like, hey, let's kind of keep out of the danger. And I'm not a little unsure about necessarily how to do this. I always think of the movie Talladega Nights with, have you ever seen this movie? Will Ferrell, he like keeps bringing his hands up in the interview. I look at Bruno kind of being like that right now in the social setting. He doesn't know what to fully do yet, because he hasn't had a lot of experience socializing. So he's kind of like, let me like keep my distance and let me move out of it, which is why I would go in and then I would leave. So I'm not just keeping him there. It's like, hey, look, you're around it, and then you get away. The stress comes down, we get back in it, and it's like working it out. It's like little doses where he sees that, oh, if I'm uncomfortable, I can leave. Versus feeling like he's trapped, and then I have to hold my space down because I'm overwhelmed. Hey, what are you doing? Don't you get it? But
right, which is, putting out of position.
Yeah, and so this is why what we're doing even with you is this slow, just kind of that same idea. We're getting in it and then get you out. Get you in it and get you out. But as far as things go, I'm really looking forward to beginning this, and we're going to start with dogs that aren't Bruno first. Getting you to set your boundaries, learn how to do this before we even get into Bruno. Because you might find that, wow, it's actually really easy for me to set boundaries with these other dogs. Then when you get to Bruno, maybe you have a block that
Yeah.
a little harder because it's Bruno.
Yeah.
And it helps identify like, oh, this is just a thing that I need to overcome, that there's a belief in me about Bruno that makes me hesitant to actually set a boundary.
Yeah, we'll see.
But it might, and sometimes it's yeah, I was just gonna say, sometimes it's the opposite. See how you want to say hi?
Hey.
Right there. You have see how much more
Hey.
passive you are?
Right, I know. Hey,
Like,
get down.
what about the bowls? And, right?
I know, I forgot. Hey. Brew, over here.
And no, see how like you have to tell them off like a dog. How did that other dog do it?
Hey.
How did that dog in the video do it?
Hey.
So make the sound and actually go at him. Like go at like move at him. No, see how you're
here.
see,
Over here.
No, so like this. Watch. Go. Get out of here. See, you're like, go over here, buddy.
I know,
Go over
yeah.
here, like be right here, right?
Yeah. I knew it'd be
And-
harder with him.
And so you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, nobody, no, like hi, like go this way, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, knock that off.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Like another dog isn't going this way over
Right.
here.
No,
They go,
for sure.
rah, rah.
For sure.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
I say knock it off.
Yeah.
And then they go on, they're gonna discipline. They're gonna dominate.
Yeah.
And we're over here, nobody, over here, over there.
Mhm.
And that's how this goes. So you're gonna move forward, but I want you to create this bubble. You're gonna move, you're gonna move, and I want him to right there, bam. Yep. And you're gonna move through the environment, but you're gonna right here, bam.
Hey.
Come on. Yeah, exactly. Just like that. You're claiming the space.
Yeah.
This is your territory. He doesn't get to dictate which way you go and how you act. And this is why. Come on. This is why. Yep. This is why we can't do what we want to do in our life.
Yeah.
He controls us,
Yeah.
and we can't have it like that.
Yeah.
And then we'll see him doing it, and he'll pull at our. Oh no, he's so unsure. Oh, poor guy.
Yeah.
And then that's how we get. Then he controls us, and then we go. I don't want to do these things.
Yeah.
He's stressed,
Yeah.
and then we go. Man, I really feel bad that he can't be a dog and he can't socialize. But we're so stressed about the stress and the stress, like vicious cycle, and so I'm creating a bubble, and I'll show you another video so that you can kind of see a dog doing this, okay? Because it's important that you understand how this connects, okay? So you're gonna create that. You're gonna have this like 3-foot bubble. So he might come around, but you're gonna create this bubble.
Okay.
He needs to submit to you, and you need to demand the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And it's like dating someone.
Right.
We want to start with this is who I am, this is my boundaries, this is how it is, and then we get into the intimacy through that process.
Yeah.
But if we just jump into bed, it might work out.
Yeah.
But there's a good chance that now we're going to say, I don't really like you doing that, and I don't like this, and that's a red flag to me, and this is...
Yeah.
Why didn't you say anything at the beginning?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? Well, I was afraid that if I did, I'm going to lose the relationship and you wouldn't like me.
Yeah.
But now here we are, having to deal with that anyway, because it's created problems.
Yeah.
So this is why it's like, if you can't claim your own space and you can't make him feel like this, how are you going to stop him with doing that to a person?
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
How are you going to how are you then going to go into a food cart and enjoy some food?
Yeah.
Because now you're just hoping and wishing that he can be a certain way, but you have to create the reality that he lives in.
Yeah.
You have to create it.
Yeah.
And so